all of a sudden I took a look around and I started looking at everybody and I thought, hang on a second here. Every single person here is wearing a bathing suit except me. And then my whole world just shattered. They say there's nothing stronger than smell to bring up memories of days gone by. Whether it's the smell of a certain perfume or cologne from someone you used to love, your grandma and grandpa's kitchen, or the inside of a tent during summer, sensations from childhood are some of the biggest triggers to take us back to simpler days. And today, we're going to talk about them all. The sights, the sounds, the smells, even the tastes of childhood, and what they mean to us today. So grab yourself a giant freezy, a big glass of Kool-Aid, slap on some Hawaiian Tropic, and let's journey back to the summers we used to love. All right, thanks for joining me today. As I'm recording this, it is literally exactly halfway through August, and you can really see that summer's changing. Summer, I hate to say it, but I feel like we're on the downhill. We're on the way out, unfortunately. And if you were a kid, you would be absolutely panicking right around this time. This would be the time you'd really start thinking about it, thinking about having to go back to school. Those horrible back to school commercials would come on and just pour salt in your wounds. But you know what? That will be an episode for another day. But even as an adult, I still think about that when I see summer changing, when I know that it's peaked and crested and we're on the downhill slide into September. I still get those little like pangs of sort of sadness is too strong a word, but it's like it's the end of something. It's the end of another season, another cycle, another summer. You know, statistically, we only get about 75 to 80 on average. And the older you get, the more you kind of think to yourself, well, there goes another one. You know, hope I got a few more. But that's not what we're talking about right now. Today, we are talking about all those sensory sensations that used to bring us. I don't know if they brought us so much joy back then. I think they did, but we didn't know it. We didn't know how much joy they would bring us 20 and 30 years later when we would smell the same smells or the same sensation, get the same taste, and it would bring us right back to those simpler days in our life. Now, I talked about the ice cream man a lot last episode, but still, I don't think there's a more recognizable sound from childhood, at least early childhood, than the sound of the ice cream man truck coming with his siren and that little song. We all love that song, right? But not only would you hear the siren, you would hear the screams of children all over the neighborhood, right? You would see kids sprinting inside, getting their money, sprinting back outside. Did you ever have to chase the ice cream man down the block? He almost got away. We had to do that a few times. You'd run him down. It was like a pack of lions on the African safari running down a gazelle or a buffalo or something, you know. Eight kids sprinting behind the truck, almost to the point of jumping on the back and pounding on the door. Stop! Stop! Now, did you ever have a certain flavor? Did you have a go-to flavor of ice cream or popsicle when you were a kid? I did. The guy in our neighborhood, it was Dickie D. Dickie D's ice cream. We actually found out where he lived, which was probably hell for him because we used to go to his house and knock on his door and be like, "Hey, can we buy some ice cream?" You know, he's like trying to relax. It's 5:30. He's probably like trying to eat dinner or just watch a show and he's got these kids at his door. I don't think it's worth the 75 cents he's going to make, but he always sold us. He was never like, "Get the hell out of here." You know, I'm not on duty. Screw off, kids. He was always very accommodating. But yeah, I bet he didn't like that when he got doxxed. It was an unfortunate series of events for him. Sure, he made a tiny bit more money, but nobody wants a bunch of kids. It's not Halloween. Come back on Halloween, you know? Nobody wants kids knocking on their door expecting ice cream. Anyway, sorry, totally got distracted there. But did you have a go-to flavor? I remember Dickie D had this unbelievable popsicle. I believe it was called the Space Shuttle, and it was root beer. It was three colors slash flavors. Well, two colors slash flavors. It was root beer, orange crush, and root beer again at the top. It was unbelievable, and it was really thick. It was like those I don't know. It's not a cyclone. I can't remember what it's called. Space Shuttle. Space Shuttle, I believe, was the Did I just say space shuttle? I don't know what I'm talking. Doesn't matter. Space something. But do you remember how thick the popsicles used to be from the ice cream man? Those were industrial grade popsicles. They weren't like the tiny thin little ones you got from the corner store or the grocery store. Like those had some serious girth to them. And that was important back then. They had this other flavor. I can't even remember what it was. It was this really obscure, gross, ugly looking thing, and I think it was green. I want to say it was SpongeBob, but I feel like we were too young for SpongeBob back then. But it might have actually been a SpongeBob pop. And he had, do you remember that candy, tear jerkers? Well, this popsicle slash ice cream cone, it was huge, by the way. It was massive on a stick. I can't believe it stayed on there. He had tear jerkers for eyes. And so when you're eating this ice cream, not only are you getting this delicious ice cream, but tear jerkers were a really, really awesome part of being a kid. They were really delicious candies. They were those ultra sour, like they would literally almost make you cry. They would make your eyes water. They were so sour. This combination of that ice cream and that candy at the same time, it was unbelievable. It was kid heaven, and it cost us like $1.50. Those were such simple times when $1.50 could buy you like perfect happiness, unbelievable happiness. I don't think there's anything in the world today that I could spend $1.50 on and feel that good. There is no equivalent. I don't think there's anything I could spend 150 dollars, maybe a massage, but still, it's not even coming close. And it'd have to be a really good massage. Not one of these lame people they've lost the heart for it. They're just doing it for the money. Nothing worse than getting a bad massage as an adult. Now, besides the ice cream man and seeing kids gathered around the ice cream truck, another staple that I talked about last time, another sight of summer that we always saw was kids having water fights. And I talked about it last episode too. Do you remember how good the water in your squirt gun tasted? What was it? It must have been some horrible toxin leaching into the plastic to make it taste so good. But oh my gosh, it was amazing. There was nothing that tasted better than that warm. It was by the time you drank it, it was almost hot, because it's sitting in your gun for 10 or 15 minutes. It's in your hot kid little hand. You're running around and oh, it tasted so good. And do you remember how it was almost impossible to find a water pistol that didn't leak? They would have those tiny little capsules on the side of it or the bottom sometimes that you'd have to take out. And gosh, those things were so hard to fill, weren't they? Remember trying to fill a little water gun in a hurry? You got the hose and just water splashing everywhere, and then put that tiny little cap back in. It's that weird little red piece of plastic, and it's leaking out the side and the bottom. I don't think water pistols were meant to last more than one or two water fights. Those things broke all the time. But still, the way that plastic looked too. Like, did you ever have a squirt gun that you were in love with? I remember when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9, I had this. My grandpa took us to the dollar store, and I bought this squirt gun. It looked like Han Solo's laser gun from Star Wars, and it was green and yellow. But that was my favorite squirt gun of all time. And just, I still can remember the texture. I remember the way it looked. I remember the way the water tasted out of it. And just, I felt so awesome when I was running around the street with that squirt gun, just like ultimate badass until someone came out with a super soaker. Then it was over. Then it was over until I got one. Now, kids on bikes. I love seeing groups of kids on bikes because it's such pure childhood innocence still. And I remember one year, me and my brother and our friend Steve, we were riding our bikes around just endlessly. We would just ride around the cul-de-sac, and we decided to put on this bike show for the neighborhood. And we must have spent a week choreographing this bike show. It was going to be this unbelievable event that was going to blow everybody's mind. This was going to be the ultimate bike show, just pulling off all kind of crazy stunts. And we we choreographed this thing, and we went around the neighborhood selling tickets for a bike show. I think it was probably, I don't know, 10 cents a ticket or something like that, some outrageous price. And I think we sold about 4 tickets. And so on the Friday afternoon, we finally put on our big bike show, and we had 4 neighbors come out. We made 40 cents, and it was the ultimate reward for us. Like that 40 cents was money well earned. And I still see, like, in my neighborhood right now, I see kids doing the same thing. And I love seeing that. I love seeing the fact that in this age and era of screens and technology and video games and cell phones and everything, I still love seeing a group of kids getting together, riding their bikes. And I've watched these kids plan these shows, debate with each other, like, what's the best move? Well, I'm gonna ride my bike off the curb at this point, and that's gonna be the big finale. I love seeing that. Now, you can't talk about summer in the 80s without talking about spandex. The sight of people in spandex. Do you remember when that became a thing? What happened when we went from people wearing normal shorts to all of a sudden it was skin tight spandex? To me, it seemed like it happened overnight. I do not understand how spandex shorts became a thing, and everyone was like, "Yeah, man, these are awesome. Check these out, bro. Put on a pair of these, squish everything together, compact it into a weird looking shape, out the door." I'm telling you, bro, these are killer with the ladies. I don't know if they were. I have absolutely no idea. I'm really thankful spandex was a short-lived fad, unless you got into cycling. Cycling is, I think, one of the only places in our society where spandex is still widely promoted and accepted. And those guys and girls don't just wear the shorts, they got the full spandex bodysuit. That is a look. Like, how much faster can you go that it's worth looking like that? That is my question. I mean, really, like, how many seconds are you shaving off? You can't just wear a pair of track pants? I don't know, maybe they get caught in the gears. But yeah, I remember spandex started in the 80s and it went hand in hand with zinc. Wasn't that the common thing back in the day to see a guy walking around in a pair of skin tight spandex shorts and a bunch of zinc all over his face? What's going on, bro? Happy summer. I miss those looks. With those giant aviator glasses, like those I don't even know what they're called. They look like a cooler version of the glasses that old people wear. Those really thick ones that just block out all sunlight from hitting their vision. Now, besides fashion and water fights, backyard pools were another sight and sound of summer, right? But what I forgot to talk about last time was lawn sprinklers. Putting on a sprinkler and running through the grass was probably one of the ultimate sensations of summer. Just the way there was nothing like it. Just the way your feet felt on the grass, the way the grass got wet and you could run and slide on it like Tom Cruise in whatever movie that was where he's sliding on the kitchen floor. There is nothing like putting on a backyard sprinkler. It was so fun. And yet it was literally the simplest form of technology that was never designed for fun. It was designed as a what was it? It was designed as ease of maintenance for watering your lawn. And yet kids found a way to have so much fun in it. I remember my older brother used to pick up the sprinkler and like shoot me with it and stuff, and it always pissed me off. It's not the way the game works, man. You're supposed to leave it on the ground. When we were a little older, my grandparents bought this Fisher Price sprinkler. It was it was awesome. It was a fire hydrant and it had all these different settings you could put on it, and it had this detachable fire hose you could take and you could shoot people with the hose, and it had all these different settings. Despite the fact that I think my older brother and I were 8 and 10, or even no, we were older. I think we were 9 and 11, or even 10 and 12, and my younger brother must have been 4 or 5. We all had so much fun using that sprinkler. Like, you would never tell the kids at school that you're, you know, 10, 12 years old still running around a sprinkler. But man, it was so fun. And when I think about summer, I still think about that Fisher Price sprinkler. And I've tried to find one for my daughter, but I just can't find it. I'm sure like so many good things from that era, they just don't make them anymore, despite the fact that we had some amazing toys and summer things back then. I'd love to be able to find those. You know, the funny thing to me about backyard pools and lawn sprinklers, anytime you see a group of kids together, most of the kids are wearing bathing suits, but there's often one naked kid. And if you look at their age, you're like, that kid is right on the border of that being acceptable. And I remember that happened to me when I was a kid. We were at my Oma and Opa's, and I was hanging out with my brother, and I think my cousins must have been there, different cousins, older ones, and we're all hanging out, and just having a blast. Everyone was having fun. We were like, they had the pool set up. We were running and diving in the pool and cannonballing, had the sprinkler going, super fun, beautiful, perfect summer day. And I remember just like really being into it. And then all of a sudden, I took a look around and I started looking at everybody and I thought, hang on a second here. Every single person here is wearing a bathing suit except me. And then my whole world just shattered because that was the exact moment that my childhood innocence and my sense of complete, like, innocence and naivety absolutely just evaporated in an instant. And now all of a sudden, I realize I look at the adults, all the adults are wearing clothes. I'm the only person standing buck naked in the backyard. And I was humiliated. I never felt so vulnerable in my entire life. And as soon as I realized that, boom, beeline inside the house, upstairs, put my clothes on. I don't think I came back outside. It was so humiliating. And then, like, later, my Oma came up to ask what was wrong. I was like, why didn't you let me wear a bathing suit? Why did you make me go naked? It's a huge deal, right? And then, of course, I thought you wanted to go. Ah, boy. Well, I'm sorry. Here, we have a bathing suit. Because, they were the generation that never threw anything away. So they still had like my uncle's bathing suits from he when he was a kid. And my Oma opens this drawer and she starts digging for a bathing suit that's 20 years old. It was so ugly. It was all plaid and gross and it smelled bad from being in the cupboard for 20 years. But you know what? It was better than being naked. And I took that ugly, old, stinky plaid bathing suit on and I put it on and it didn't fit well. But I got to tell you, I felt a lot better in that thing than I did before. But that was it. That was the last time I ever did that at a pool party, as far as I remember. Now I want to shift away a little bit from the waterworks and pools and sprinklers. I would say that one of the most nostalgic smells of childhood is a campfire. Doesn't that just take you right back to camping with your family or your grandparents, or even maybe being invited to go along with your friends on a camp trip or going to summer camp or something like that? The smell of a campfire always takes me back. And if you couple that with some tacky outdoor 80s patio lights, which I actually meant to put on my background here, and I'm just looking at it and I realize I don't have those, and I wish I did. This background is a little too modern for me. I wanted to make a tackier one. Oh well, too late. But I remember my grandparents, they had this place at Shawnigan Lake and they had a trailer. In a previous episode, I called it a house. Well, pardon me, it wasn't a house. It was a place. They had a place at the lake and it was a trailer, but it was a really nice trailer. And still, more than I could afford today. And they had those tacky 80s patio lights. They were orange, blue, green, yellow, strung up all along the perimeter of the yard. They had the white picket fence. They had the little lawn area with a fire pit. And it wasn't a fire pit. It was a actual like circular round fireplace. I don't know what you'd call that. It was so good. And just a combination of those beautiful patio lights, the fire, sitting around with your grandparents. Remember when you used to carve roasting sticks? You'd take your little Swiss Army pocket knife out there and try to carve the perfect roasting stick. I remember that was such a big thing back then, was trying to get your roasting stick absolutely perfect. Like just get the bark all perfectly shaved off without cutting your finger. I remember I used to try to make a two-pronged stick because I thought I could roast multiple marshmallows at the same time. It was always a disaster. Never worked. It always wind up falling off and stressing you out and getting you frustrated. But just being able to sit around the campfire with your friends and your family, roasting marshmallows, roasting hot dogs. Do you remember what a burnt marshmallow tasted like? So hot. You got to be so careful not to burn your tongue. Just that charred black on the outside, and you just literally light it on fire, blow it out. It's all black, charred. Take that first bite. It's crunchy, right? Do you remember that crunchy sensation as a so you take it out, and then the goo just starts starts coming out. Just trying to like eat slash drink this liquid marshmallow that you've melted in the flame, getting all over your hands, all over your roasting stick. You were just a huge mess by the end of it, but that was just part of the fun. It was so good. And I don't know about you, but I did not have the patience to roast a good marshmallow back then. I would try for about, 30 seconds, a minute, and then I would get so bored. You just want to eat it. Like, that's it, it's going in the fire, shove it in. And you just engulfed in flames every time. Now, my grandpa, he could roast a perfect marshmallow. I remember watching him. Did your grandparents do this, or maybe your mom or dad or somebody? But I feel like every family had someone who was the marshmallow master. They'd been roasting their whole lives, and they were a master of their craft. That was my grandpa. He'd just sit there so patiently with his professional. He had a real professional skewer, I guess you would call it, that I'm sure he bought from Sears or Canadian Tire or something. It had a wooden handle and a long metal stake. You could kill a bear with that thing if you had to, I'm sure. And he would just sit there roasting that marshmallow so slowly, so carefully, in a way that I never could. And he would get these things perfectly golden brown. And he would give it to you. And be like, "Here, Adam, that one's for you." And that memory still sticks with me. And man, I get choked up thinking about that one because it's crazy like what what you'll remember and what will trigger you as an adult. And it's a beautiful memory. It's a memory as golden as a marshmallow. But for my grandpa, I was just roasting a marshmallow. But for me, it was creating a memory I'll never forget. And that's what I think about when I think about him today. You know? Just sitting there roasting a marshmallow. Pure love, simplest act of kindness, just a grandparent doing something for a grandkid. And I'll carry that forever. Whew. All right, that's enough of that. Let's move on. My grandpa wouldn't want to dwell on that. What? Okay, that's enough. Okay, you had your moment. Let's carry on. Let's carry on here. I'm dead. No one cares. That might sound awful to say, but my grandpa was very pragmatic and also very hilarious. He had a great sense of humor, so I'm sure he'd say, he'd say something like that. Anyway, so speaking of special places in summer, they had a trailer. They had this trailer at Shawnigan Lake. Did you ever have a place you went to with a very distinct smell? My grandparents' trailer had this unbelievable smell. It was perhaps the most exciting smell of my childhood because their place at Shawnigan Lake was literally kid paradise. They had this beautiful trailer. There's a playground right across the street, beautiful tree-lined avenues everywhere, forest behind it, beautiful private lakefront access, a big dock in the lake with a slide on it, docks you could fish off of. It was literally kid paradise. It was paradise for a lot of people, but especially for a kid growing up in the 80s, there was nothing like this place. And and that smell when you would open the door into the trailer, it would just hit you. It smelled so good. I cannot tell you what that smell is. But if I smelt it today, I'd be like, that's the trailer. I know what that smell is. Even the bathroom, it was hooked up to a septic system, right? So when you're using a toilet that's on a septic system, um, maybe you've been in an RV or a motorhome or a trailer before with a septic tank or whatever or a hookup. It's got that kind of gross septic smell. Even that was comforting because it was a gross smell, but it was a gross smell from the best place in the entire world, and it was only there for a second when you like quickly flush the toilet, right? So even those bad smells, it's kind of crazy how sometimes like a gross smell can trigger an amazing memory. Maybe you had a cabin or something like that. Maybe you had your own trailer or a place you went to with that distinct signature smell that as soon as you hit it, you're like, oh yeah, I'm home, or I'm in heaven. Now, speaking of smells at the lake, do you remember? how, do you remember what a hot air mattress used to smell like? Remember back in the day when air mattresses were made of, what were they made of? Rubber? It must have been rubber. Just that we always had these navy blue air mattresses with these white lines running down them. I can't remember what company made them. I don't think it was Coleman. It doesn't matter. But I remember the smell of a hot air mattress, one that had been lying out in the sun for a couple hours or in a hot shed. And when you pulled it out to blow it up with your mouth because pumps were for babies, just how good it smelled and how excited you used to get because that was kind of the prequel to going down to the lake, going in the boat, going in the water, whatever. There were so many little things from childhood that just compounded together to excite us even more. It was this stacking event of exciting and amazing things that would just go together. Do you remember the old school foot pumps? They're so easy to use today. They're so efficient. Well, my grandparents had this crazy old school one. It's really hard to describe. It was all metal and it had this weird X bracket that you would have to set up and this weird like metal pedal that you would step on, and if your foot slipped off the pedal, it was very easy to get it jammed in between the brackets and cut your foot off, all these horrible things. I hated using that stupid pump. It terrified me every time I had to use it, but it was easier than blowing it up with your mouth. Well, actually no, it wasn't. It was actually much harder, but it was like, do you want to cut your foot off or do you want to pass out from blowing up this air mattress? Now, tell me if your grandparents were different, but my grandparents always insisted we wear sunscreen. And this was back in the days when you could be out in the sun for more than 10 minutes and not feel like your skin's literally on fire. Miss those days. But my grandma made us wear the normal stuff, and then she'd always bust out this super dark brown or black bottle of Hawaiian Tropic, and she'd just like lather herself in the Hawaiian Tropic and go down to the beach and be like, Grandma, what are you doing? She's like, well, I'm trying to get a tan. It's just she would turn the same color as the bottle, you know? I mean, not really, but like I remember that was a big thing with like my grandma's generation in that time is just everyone putting on like the I think it was SPF 3 or 4, and these ladies would just lather themselves in this stuff and and go down to the beach, get these crazy, crazy dark brown tans. Oh, I remember that. That was funny. Now I want to shift gears a little bit, go back to smells. A couple weeks ago, I was in Victoria visiting my mom and my brother, and it was July 11th, which I did not realize was 7-Eleven day until my brother and I decided to go into 7-Eleven. We're just going to get a Slurpee. I never have Slurpees anymore, maybe once a year. But we go into 7-Eleven on 7-Eleven, and they were giving out free Slurpees. I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. But the thing that made me happier than that was as soon as I walked into 7-Eleven, it smelled exactly the same as it always has from my earliest memories. And that triggered something in me too. There was something about so simple as just going to 7-Eleven with my brother to get a Slurpee that just totally took me back to being a kid when you would get maybe $1 for your allowance and you would ride your bike to 7-Eleven or walk to 7-Eleven with your friend and you'd have to be very budget conscious. But you could buy a lot with $1 back then. I think a Slurpee was 25 cents. Maybe it went up to the astronomical price of 35 cents at some time in your childhood. But everything used to be so cheap. They had penny candy, 2-cent candy, 5-cent candies. You could get so much candy with $1. Heck, maybe even had $2. And I remember some of the best memories of my childhood were just going to 7-Eleven with a friend, whether it was me and Steve and my older brother, riding our bikes there, loading up on candy and going home or getting a Slurpee. Later in life, I used to walk there with my friends, and we would just, that's what we would do. Our whole day plan, we'd meet up. Or, one guy would go to the other guy's house and be like, well, let's go to 7-Eleven. That was our whole afternoon. That was our plan. And we would go to 7-Eleven. Smelled so good. That smell would hit you. You get your Slurpee, you get your candy, and then we would just walk. They had these big fields by the high school there, Lambrick Fields, and we would just sit in the field. We would watch clouds, look for shapes in the clouds, yell. We used to have a lot of fun just sitting in fields yelling for no reason. Um, Eat our candy. drink our Slurpee, talk about who we had a crush on, all this stuff. And that was so fun. When I think back to that era of my life, just sitting in a grassy field beneath a beautiful blue sky with white puffy clouds, eating your candy and drinking your Slurpee, those were just the simplest things. But they brought so much joy. And again, as an adult, I would say the only thing that is so simple that brings me as much joy, on a different level at least, is just listening to my daughter talk to herself. She's 4. She talks to herself. She sings songs. She babbles. That's the only thing I can think of that is so simple. I guess maybe besides having a cup of coffee in the morning when you don't have to go to work. So so things change. The simplicity, the things we get, the simple joy out of changes, but it wasn't on that super high energetic level that it was back then. I'm sure the fact that we were drinking, I don't want to think about how many grams of sugar were running through our bodies and coursing through our veins. I'm sure that helped, but that was just fun, man. Like when I think about the simple pleasures of summer, that was it. We didn't have to do anything else. Remember what a pack of Big League Chew smelled like? Wasn't that something? Wasn't that its own thing? That was a heavy investment at 7-Eleven because I think Big League Chew costs about 25 cents. It was expensive, but it was so worth it. I remember the first time somebody introduced me to Big League Chew, they couldn't believe I hadn't had it. So, what do you mean you never had Big League Chew? What's wrong with you? Haven't you played T-ball? Anyways, this guy opens up. I think it was my friend Jason when I was a kid. Opens up this bag of Big League Chew, this shredded bubble gum. Oh, that smell. It was like nothing else, man. Big League Chew is so tasty, so delicious. Remember Popeye cigarettes? Remember what those tasted like? Just, oh yeah, man. It's been a tough day. Sucking back on a couple of those. Those are delicious. Make sure that the red end is facing out so you look cool, like you're really smoking. Wasn't that kind of a weird candy to give to? Let's give them cigarettes. Hey, let's get them hooked early. Let's show them how cool this is. It's kind of like an odd choice of candy. Of all the things they could have done, could they not have made them like, I don't know, more like pixie sticks? No, no, no. These got to be cigarettes, okay? We want them to get into this young, and we'll sell them at the same place where they can buy the real ones. In fact, put the Popeye cigarettes in front of the Marlboros. We're going to start grooming these kids early. Let's get them hooked. Do you remember how good it used to be to get a freezy? Remember at any kind of child event, like a sports day or something, they would always have a huge cooler full of freezies. Hundreds and hundreds of freezies, enough for every single kid in the school to have a freezy. What was the downside of a freezy? You take that freezy, you cut off the top, eat it, suck it back, right? It starts to melt, so you're drinking the freezy now, but there's still the big frozen chunk in it, so you're eating like you're biting that, drinking it at the same time. But the after effect of a freezy was what? Cut gums. Do you remember how much your gums would hurt after eating a freezy? It's, mother, ah, happened again. Couldn't they have developed some better delivery mechanism on those freezies? They knew that that plastic was cutting our gums. They didn't care. Back at the corporate office, like, listen, guys, we're getting a lot of complaints that these kids are getting cut gums. Who cares? Keep selling them. We don't care. That was like your first experience with a greedy corporation, an evil corporation, whoever was making the freezies. Nowadays they're building data centers and destroying the planet for profit, but back then they were cutting your gums because they didn't care about you. All they wanted was your money. Yeah, that was a shallow entry into the world of corporate greed and corruption, which would stay with you forever and still does. It's just different. Now they're not cutting our gums, they're polluting the water and building the AI data centers and bribing our politicians. But hey, that's a story for another day. Do you remember how awesome it was to go to a concession stand in the summertime? Pass a baseball field or something like that, or go to the beach. There'd be a concession stand. It didn't really matter how old you were either. because I think your parents were just as excited as you were to get some fries or a greasy cheeseburger or a pop or something from a concession stand. Like I remember going to the beach. Even as a teenager, we used to go to Thetis Lake, and every single person went to the concession stand. And what was it about concession stand fries? They were better than McDonald's. They were so good. I remember just looking at every single person on the beach lining up at the concession stand, getting the fries, a burger, a pop. Why is it that food from a concession stand tastes 10 times better than anywhere else? I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if it's a experience or what, but even in my 30s, this was a while ago. I remember it was 2018, back in the good old days before the world went to absolute horse poopy and everything got weird. I remember it was I was teaching back then, and it was the first weekend of summer holidays. It was a Sunday night, and my girlfriend lived in the West End in Vancouver, and we were at her place that weekend, and I remember Sunday night coming back from the beach, the first Sunday night of summer, and I was by myself. She must have been at home or something, and I just saw the concession stand, and I stopped and I got a veggie burger, fries, and a drink. I remember just sat there. I was so unbelievably happy, just sitting there on summer holidays. The burger was delicious, the fries were delicious, the drink was amazing, and just thinking, this is awesome. This is a 10 out of 10 experience. And it's funny how, again, it was the simplest thing, but it was just, I don't know if it was a nostalgic thing coming at me that was making it better, just being right at the start of another beautiful summer. But it was amazing. And I think that's one thing that's kind of stayed consistent from childhood to adulthood is how a concession stand can just turn your whole world around. You'll be walking somewhere, maybe you're like going on a long run or walk or bike trip, and like it's like an oasis in the distance. Like it's a concession stand. Let's go. Remember how good your neighborhood used to smell when people were grilling steaks outdoors? That was one of the best smells. That smell, the propane, the steak cooking. Sometimes you'd be having multiple neighbors doing the same thing on a summer evening. That was unreal. That was such a good smell. And speaking of fuels and whatnot, does anyone out there have gas? The smell of gas as a sensory trigger? Because for me, I remember we had this one summer when my friends and I were in university. One of my friend's dads had a place on a lake. He lived on the lake. And so almost every week we used to go out to his dad's place and he had a motorboat and we would take the boat out on the lake. We'd go wakeboarding, water skiing. It was so fun. It was probably one of the best summers of my life, actually. But before we did that, we always had to drive up to the gas station there. It was this really cool, like really small, like it was like its own neighborhood outside of town, almost kind of in the rural area, like this quaint little village setting. You would always have to go to the gas station, the one gas station, and get boat gas. And so I started associating the smell of gas with going out on the boat with my friends and just having so much fun. And in fact, a couple summers before that, I got a motorcycle and I remember associating the smell of gas with my motorcycle because when you fill up a motorcycle, you don't stick it all the way in like a regular car. You kind of have to like leave it outside a little bit, make sure you're not overfilling it. And I remember just that smell of gas. I felt so free. It was the same. I think it was the same summer I graduated high school. So now I'm 18 years old. I've got this awesome motorcycle. I'm free. It was summertime. I was living the life. And so whenever I smell gas, that takes me back to like those beautiful summers on the boat, summers on the water, summers on the lake with my bike. So maybe you, if you're listening, maybe you had like a cool car or something like that. Maybe you had a motorcycle of your own, and then that smell of gas just brings back all those feelings. Now, speaking of as we got older and the how things changed, I don't drink anymore. In fact, I almost never drink, but I can't say that was true for all of my youth. May or may not have gone through a period in college where I was Yeah, I went through a phase where it's like, okay, let's slow her down a little bit here, Adam. Let's just back her off a little bit. I think that's common. I don't recommend it. PSA, I do not recommend it to anyone. I would recommend not drinking, or if you're going to do it, just do it in moderation. Literally, there's no prize for drinking a lot. So there's my PSA. But younger Adam was a little bit different. Anyways, I remember one summer, I had this amazing group of friends I talked about on a previous podcast, the guys I was in a band with. We we had so much fun together. We eventually got to this point where we were partying all the time, every single day. It was summer. Thank God this period did not last long because it wasn't good for us and it might have killed us. But it was 2 months of we were partying every day. And I remember finally we got to a point where like, guys, we got to stop. We got to slow this down. And I'm glad we did. But like, so for me, the smell of beer also triggers like amazing memories from summers gone by, my college and university days, and just spending time with amazing friends. And I think the last thing I want to think about or end on here is just the sights of summer. Is in August, how it shifts a little bit. Tell me if you see this, but to me, August has this golden glow to it. Part of it is, I'm sure, part of the forest fires, but the way the sun shines in August is just a little bit different. The grass is kind of parched, it's dry, it's yellow, it's brown. But the way the sun hits it, there's this beautiful golden tinge to everything in August. It's actually a lot like the picture behind me. And it's kind of one of the last beautiful parts of summer before everything starts to fade away. But to me, that's always a sight, right? That's always such a beautiful part of it. And I want to end with one last memory here. I think the last summer that I actually felt like a kid, or at least it was the last it was the last page of what I would call that chapter of my life. Right? I was a bit of a slow to mature, but that's okay. It was when I just moved to Vancouver. I was 23 when I moved to Vancouver, and I only had one friend there that summer. And so my friend Steve was there. We got into playing street hockey a lot. I think we were both kind of missed home a little bit. I think Vancouver's a very lonely city. If you move there without friends or family, it's a very lonely place. I don't know what it is about it. People are very shut off and isolated, and everyone's lonely, but no one talks to each other. It's very strange. So it was a hard adjustment there. So I'm really glad Steve was there. But I think we were both jonesing for the comfort that we used to feel as kids, maybe homesick. I don't know what it would be because Steve moved there a couple years before I did. So I think we were both a little homesick for Victoria, for our families, for the friends we'd left behind. And I remember one summer, this was right at the end of summer, we were playing street hockey in this school. There was a school around there that had street hockey nets built into it on the playground there, and it was like you had to go down some steps to get there, so you didn't have to worry about your ball shooting into traffic or anything like that. Well, I remember Steve and I always played street hockey there together, and it was pretty fun, and we had a good time. And I remember one night Steve couldn't go, so I went by myself. And to me, that is my one of my top loneliest memories of summer was I remember being on this like street hockey court by myself at the very end of summer, watching the sun go down earlier than it ever had all summer and thinking, this is it. This is the end. So summer is over. And if you're a Simpsons fan, there's an episode where Martin Prince gets a pool and he's really popular, and then his pool collapses and everyone leaves him, and he's standing there buck naked in his backyard with his broken pool, and he starts singing. He's like, "The summer winds come blowing in." That's pretty much how I felt. If you're not a Simpsons fan, you don't get that reference. Sorry, but I remember that. That was just like I'm not trying to end it on a sad note, but I remember knowing in that moment that my life, the childhood part of my life was over, that the kid part of life was over, the young adult phase was over. And after that, it was going to be very different. And it was. It was because that was the end of childhood and the start of adulthood. And it was a bit of a sad and lonely transition. So when I think about summer, they're not all it's still a beautiful memory to me, but it's certainly not a happy one. I still remember what that felt like. Just a sense of knowing that something was over. It wasn't just summer. It was a chapter of my life. And I wonder if you have something similar in your own. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you could reminisce, and I hope it brought you back to some good memories from your own childhood. I hope maybe it helped trigger some sensations and some memories that could just take you back, maybe make you laugh, smile, reminisce, and just feel good. Maybe take you out of anything you might be going through today that isn't as fun as things used to be. So that's it for the episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to give me a like or a follow or share it with someone you know. Please subscribe if you haven't, it's very helpful. Just a few episodes left for the summer, and then that's going to be it for season 3 of Remember When Radio. So tune in again next week. Just 3 episodes left. I'll see you then. Thanks for listening.